I think it probably saved to your computer, I think.
It's recording.
Yeah,
Is it?
yeah.
Okay, go. All right. All right, guys. So my name is Tyler. I am going to talk about entrepreneurship in the age of AI. 10 lessons on how to ride the wave. So, who am I? So, I actually went to UC Berkeley. Um, I was joking in the last class that you guys are lucky that he starts with the fast means slow method because in Berkeley, like the default for the first day of school was that they would start with like the hardest lecture of the semester, specifically to like scare off the kids that weren't ready to commit to the course because everything was oversubscribed. So the class would be like 100 seats and there'd be like 130 people who wanted to take it. So, and then by the second class, there were like 90 kids left. So anyways, but yeah, I studied cognitive science and computer science at Berkeley. And then I was the founding engineer at Calm, their first employee. Built up when I left, we were about 300 people. When I started, we were three. So really kind of rode the whole journey with Calm from start to growth. We taught meditation to 150 million people, and we were the number one health and fitness app for several years. Actually, the year I left was the year they stopped being in number one, so it was definitely my fault. And now I'm the founder and CTO of Mentla, and we build an AI therapist. So that's been really fun. I'll talk about that just very briefly, but mostly the talk is just about whoops, I guess that's where's my cursor here? Trying to get rid of that thing.
Yeah, just
Do you know how I do this? There we go. Then how do I like minimize? Because I'm covering myself up here. See that?
yeah. So go to the
Like I
screen.
literally can't see my cursor here. See that?
Oh yeah.
There's no cursor. It's weird.
Oh, there it comes.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Um, yeah, so I'm going to talk about how can you guys kind of chart a course through the very rapidly changing economy with AI. So I think as budding entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs, I think the most important thing you guys can use AI for is to learn more quickly. Um, I think as an entrepreneur, like your learning rate is actually the most important metric you can have. Because as an entrepreneur, you're going to have to be doing a lot of different things. And so you're going to have to be able to learn really quickly. Um, if you do decide to be entrepreneurial, your education will not stop after college. And I would actually say that for any role, no matter whether you're an entrepreneur or not, continuing your education after college is going to be increasingly required in the economy because things are changing quickly. But I think on the flip side, you can use AI to literally 10x your speed of learning. And so what that means is that I don't think you should be constrained to go like at the speed of the class. And so that could be on both ends of that. That could mean that you're actually going slower than the rest of the class on some things, or you need more time and you can spend time with AI learning because you're maybe feeling like you're behind. Or if the class, maybe you're going faster and you can go way faster than the class if you're passionate about something. It really does open up a lot of doors for you to go at your own pace. And so, kind of on the flip side of the fact that AI is making it more important than ever to learn quickly, it also is making it easier than ever to learn quickly. So, there's actually a specific AI prompt I use when I'm trying to learn something kind of at the edge of my knowledge. I'll ask it to use something called a Socratic dialogue, which is basically where it's going to be asking me very specific questions that kind of like are right at my level so that I'm like kind of expanding myself. It's kind of like lifting weights at the gym, right? Like you want to lift exactly enough that you're really pushing yourself. So the Socratic dialogue is basically telling the AI to help you do that with your own learning process. Um, and then something else that I do and that I think you guys could try is just like when you're going on a walk, like just put in your headphones and just like talk like an unhinged crazy person, but just have like your phone transcribe it, and then you can go back and have your AI like organize that into like cohesive themes or like actually help you understand your own thinking or like kind of where your level is at. And so it's almost like testing yourself. Um, I would say more generally, like if you're not using AI to speed up your rate of learning, you are going to be left behind by people who do. Number two is that you're going to need to own your own data going forward. And I think the cool thing is that because the AIs, the base models are getting smarter over time, the value of that underlying data is increasing. This video has absolutely nothing to do with the slide. It's just here to remind you of how quickly AI video is improving. Um, but one recent example is I actually went to the doctor and I got a bunch of blood work done, and he like called me with my results, and I was like, "Hey, can you actually like send me this as like a text document?" Or like he sent me a PDF, but then I was able to convert that into text, meaning I now have like a spreadsheet of my results like in my own Google Drive, which then means that I can then go ask an AI, like, what do these results mean? And the AI was able to give me significantly more insights about the trajectory of my own health than the doctor did, because he only had like 3 minutes, right? And I also got blood work done like 2 years ago, and I had those in the same format, and I was able to ask the AI, like, compare these. What does this mean about my health? So that's basically like step one of like automating your doctor. I would actually say that GPT-5 Pro, which is like the latest OpenAI AI model, is already smarter than your doctor for 90% of medical questions that you're going to have, as long as you have the data to give it. And then as an entrepreneur, this would apply to anything like customer interaction logs, support tickets. Anytime you do a sales call, you should be transcribing that, basically capturing all of that raw data so that then you can use that to improve your business processes, or, you could feed in all of the sales calls transcripts and say like, what should I be doing better? Like, why am I not closing these deals? And it could give you like really deep insights. So those are just some examples, but like in general, you should be thinking about ingesting and taking in all of the data that you can and just keeping that for yourself. And as these AIs get smarter, it'll be able to make new connections that can help you. Yeah, what's up?
When like GPT-5 Pro is taking information, how do you know that it is accurate, especially for like the medical field?
Yeah, that's a good
Where
question.
grab it?
That's a good question. You can usually look at the actual sources that it's going to use. And you can prompt it in a way that says too, like, please only use these specific type of sources. So you can get some of that with prompting and just like looking at the sources that it's actually using to make those. But I think too, you're going to start to see increasingly more specialized AIs. So like a GPT-5 is just like an open text box that you can put in anything and it'll kind of do anything. But you're going to start to see more specific like medical AIs or those kinds of things are going to start to become more and more popular. So like actually like for example, like our AI therapist is a very good example of that. Like you can use GPT-5 for therapy right now, but it's just not a very good therapist. It's going to like hallucinate and like tell you some weird things. And there's actually already a lot of reports of people like kind of triggering like psychosis by like talking to just like a general AI model that wasn't specifically trained to do therapy. So I think as more niche AIs come on, they will also have more safeguards for things like medical decisions or therapy. So that's kind of actually the whole point of my business, is taking like a specific vertical and trying to solve that exact problem. So actually, I'll talk about that, I think, in point number 5. Um, so stay tuned for that. I think this is actually potentially the most important point, which I would want to have you guys, if you guys only take away one thing from this talk, it is be optimistic. Being pessimistic about technology has never been a good long-term bet. There's a lot of doomerism out there. I'll give you one example that you guys may or may not have seen, but there's a million other examples like this. There's a lot of people out there who are saying, don't use AI. It uses way too much water. This is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard in my life. It's sort of like saying like in the 1900s, like don't use a car. It's using way too much rubber. It's like, what? Literally growing alfalfa in the US uses 100 times more water than AI does globally. So I think these are the kinds of narratives that people who are just clearly against the tech for other reasons are trying to shove down your throats to, I think, stop people from using it. I think maybe this is a little controversial, but I would actually say like the journalist class as a whole is like very actively against AI. As someone who actually like is at the cutting edge of the field and like knows how these systems work, like I've honestly never read a single article that was written in like a mainstream news publication about AI that was like any good. They're all like full of lies and misinformation, basically. Um, and so my advice would be like literally don't listen to anything that you read from a journalist about AI. Like listen to the people who are actually building the technology. And more broadly, like be optimistic. This is the biggest opportunity in the history of the world, potentially. Number 4 is embrace the vibe. So have you guys heard of vibe coding before? Has anyone heard that term? A couple people. So vibe coding is basically using AI to write code for you. And you can literally just talk to it and say, like, I want a website that looks like this and it has a form that when you put in your, like, you can just talk to it and it'll just write you the code and give you the website. You don't have to know how to write the code. So that's vibe coding. This is Rick Rubin. He's the greatest, one of the greatest, like, music producers of the past generation. He's also a walking meme. When I saw this, I thought it was AI generated because he looks so ridiculous, but that is a real guy. And he is in the vibe. He is vibe coding. So I think this is the vibe that you guys want to have with AI is like, how can I take this crazy idea and like turn it into something real that I could like share with someone else? I think the faster you have that creative feedback loop, like the more powerful you're going to become. So kind of a similar example, but like just like ranting for 10 minutes on a walk and just turning that into like startup ideas that are like unique to you, or like vibe coding an app, even if you don't know how to code, but like maybe you have a specific thing you're trying to do on your computer that's kind of challenging or that you want to automate, and you can just like ask AI to like write you a Python script to like do it for you, even though you don't even know what Python is. Like it'll really help. And the great thing is too that like, say for example, you vibe code something with Python, you don't know how to write code or read code. It writes it for you, and it mostly works because it probably will mostly work because it's really good, but it doesn't quite work exactly the way you want. And then you can just go in and ask it and be like, okay, change this. It didn't quite work, or it's making this particular mistake, and it'll just update the code for you. So this is like an iterative process. I would actually argue that this is like a new form of art that has come to life. Yeah, what's up?
So Rick Rubin, he's famously like doesn't play any instruments, right? And he
Yeah.
doesn't know how to do the actual producing electronic beats and things like that. But is one of the most prolific producers, right?
Yeah. Well, so actually point number 6 is embrace your unique point of view. So I'll talk about this in a second, but like this is directly from Rick Rubin.
Yeah.
He talks a lot about basically how when he works with artists, I mean, he's worked with like at least 50 of like the top artists that you all heard, like A-listers. And he helps them produce their records. And they all say like Rick Rubin was the reason I like made a great record. And what he does is he helps artists like tap into their own unique perspective. And he like basically makes them more them, if that makes sense. That's how he talks about it. He's like, I want them to be as confident about what they think and what they think sounds good. And then if they make what they think sounds good, they're going to have fans. And I think it's kind of poetic that he literally has become like the meme for vibe coding. Like this picture is the meme for vibe coding. I think it's great that it's Rick Rubin because he is somebody who has really embraced the idea of like, try to turn your ideas into life. So anyways, this isn't a talk about Rick Rubin, but he is an interesting guy. I think it's become increasingly clear in the past like six to 12 months that like a lot of people a couple years ago were like, AI is just going to go end to end and just solve every job and like no one's going to have any jobs anymore. Now it's becoming clear that like AI doesn't really go end to end, it goes middle to middle, meaning that there's like the ends are still available for humans. And so the beginning, the first part is prompting. And the last part is verifying. So actually really related to your question of like, how do you know if the medical diagnosis is accurate? I think that's like the verification problem. If you have specific expertise, like I think verification, I think there will be a lot of huge businesses that come up just specifically around how do we verify that an AI's output is actually worth, shipping to customers or like putting in production or like is safe enough for, mass adoption. Because a lot of these systems, they're probabilistic. And so unlike prior versions of software, which would be, 100% accurate, a lot of AI systems are like 99.5% accurate. But like that last 0.5%, in some industries, maybe that's totally fine. Like for example, here, this is like an AI image, and like you can tell that it's like not quite right, like the way it got that hand, like it looks kind of weird, right? The human hands are particularly problematic still, but maybe that's totally fine for you. Maybe that's in like the 0.5% that it's not quite good at, but it's just a picture. Who really cares? But if you're like doing like self-driving cars or something like that, like you can't have 99.5, like you need 100. And so I think that this verification piece is going to be like a huge set of opportunities in the economy for like how do we verify that the outputs are accurate for a particular use case. But then I think potentially more interesting than that is the prompting piece. So I actually think, it might sound simple, like just writing a sentence or two to tell the AI, but actually prompting is like a really deep thing. When you really think about what does it mean to write a good AI prompt, which a lot of the best AI prompts are like 20 pages long. Like they're like really detailed. They have a huge amount of context. I think good prompting is basically equivalent to like good writing. And good writing is very difficult. And it's like a whole thing that you should become better at. I think as these AIs get more powerful, becoming a better writer and therefore a better prompter will be probably the most high leverage skill that you can invest in. And the great thing is then the AI can do all the busy work in the middle. And so you're kind of just able to almost be like the orchestrator of like the symphony of AIs. Recently, I was working on a feature and was spinning up like AIs using code, but like this is now available to anyone like with vibe coding. Like I literally had like hundreds of AIs like doing specific tasks. And this was like a few weeks ago. It kind of felt magical. It was like I'm like orchestrating like these little workers and they're each doing something that like a couple of years ago would have taken a person like several hours. And now in parallel, we're doing like 1,000 of these at the same time. We're basically doing like tens of thousands of hours of like human work and it comes all back in like 5 minutes and it's just like done. So it's like, and it costs like $10 or something. It's pretty incredible. And I think that that ability to like orchestrate and have like lots of AI systems running on your behalf will be something that even if you don't know how to code, like there's already tools out there to be able to do that now. And so if you're not kind of stepping into that place of power, I would say, you're going to be at a disadvantage. But I think that the good thing is that like you can basically become passable at pretty much any job in a couple of minutes, which before like to get passable at something probably would have taken a few months. So that's a pretty big change that I think stepping into that is really valuable. Yeah, this is the Rick Rubin thing about embracing your own unique point of view. I think AIs don't have a point of view, and I think there's very few things that I would confidently say like AIs will never be able to do this because they're improving so quickly, but I don't think AIs will ever have a point of view. I don't even know what it would mean to say that an AI has a point of view. And they're always going to give you pretty much a conventional answer. At least in the current iteration with LLMs, like the way that they're trained is to predict the most likely next word. And so because it's the most likely next word, at some level it's predictable, right? And so if you have a unique point of view about something, I think that is your human advantage. And so I think you should try to lean into that as much as you possibly can. I think there's like a whole journey of discovery to figure out what your unique point of view is. But I would say like if that is your North Star, you're probably going to be successful in the AI economy. And just like this mouse has embraced his mousiness, you too should embrace your humanness. I am definitely looking forward to the world where like these AI videos are like real time and we can just like interact with them. Like imagine this mouse, like we can just talk to him here and he's like He's got a whole backstory, and it's gonna be pretty fun. There's a lot of folks working on that. I have a friend who's working in like AI video game generation, and it's pretty crazy what they can do now. I'm not really a gamer, but like it's gonna get really compelling. Anyways, that's a little bit of a side point. I think the best way to think about what AI is going to do from like a macroeconomic perspective is that it's going to be like the Industrial Revolution 2.0. So basically what happened in the Industrial Revolution in the 1800s, they invented the steam engine and electricity, and then over the next 100 years, basically everything got reinvented from the ground up with electricity and steam power, creating entire new industries. And pretty much every single thing humans did was reinvented from the ground up. And as a result of that, the global GDP, which like before the Industrial Revolution was like in today's dollars, the average person was making the equivalent of like $1,000 a year, which is like very poor. Now the average global GDP is like $20,000 per person. And I think that basically what AI is going to do is basically just make that curve, which is already really steep. When you look at it from that big perspective, it's already really steep. It's going to get even steeper. So I think in particular, if we're able to like hook up robots to AI, which I think is probably the most likely thing, is that we will be able to do that. You could potentially see things like 10% GDP growth, which right now, a good year for GDP growth is like 3%. A bad year is like 1 or 2. So if we're in a regime where like we have 10% GDP growth, which means the economy is like doubling every like 6 years, that's going to be a huge amount of economic opportunity. Everyone's salaries will go up. There'll be a lot of new wealth that is created. But I think that the way to think about it from like an entrepreneurial perspective is that almost every single thing that people do can be reimagined with AI at the core. And so I think the Industrial Revolution took about 100 years to kind of play out across the economy. I think this will be faster. But I think there is like at least 10 or maybe even 20 or 30 years where like we're going to still have those opportunities to reinvent everything around this technology. And so as you guys come into your careers, you're almost coming in at like the perfect time. As long as you're kind of aware of how this technology works and you're excited to do that, I think the number of opportunities are going to be enormous. And then I think this is something that most people don't talk about. They do talk about like the job destruction and kind of like create like fear narratives around that, which I can understand. There is reason to make sure that you're not going to be starting a career that's going to be automated. But I think that the people don't talk about the flip side of that, which is like as important, which is that like prices should fall across a whole range of the economy. So this chart actually shows since the year 2000 in real dollars, so like inflation adjusted, how much have things changed in price? So like hospital services, college tuition, housing have gone way up. And then basically anything that's like tech enabled has gone way down. And so I think what AI will potentially be able to do is basically take all of the things that are currently not tech enabled, like seeing your doctor. I mean, there's some technology there, but not really. You're basically just talking to a person, and it'll basically be able to make that into a tech-enabled service in the sense that it will have the same like deflationary like price drop. So, for example, imagine now you go to the doctor, you pay a $50 copay, your insurance pays $500 for whatever tests you got. So like that visit costs like $500. And imagine that costs $5 or 5 cents even to do the same like level of like medical care. So I think that that's kind of the potential regime that we're in where, for example, if you have a job that pays you, $80,000 a year, but the price of everything in the economy is like 10x lower, like effectively your real wages just like went way up. And so I think the place where the opportunities will be is the folks who can actually take an industry and be part of this deflationary trend. So that's actually what we're trying to do with Mentla with therapy is like taking an industry where there's like supply constraints, like there's not enough therapists. Most people who want to see a therapist can't find one that they like. And even if they can, they can't afford it because it's incredibly expensive. And we're hoping to drop the price curve of that by, a factor of 100x. While ideally actually improving the quality of the care. Yeah, what's up?
I just had a question, just because you said you made Mentla is basically an AI therapist.
Yeah.
And one of the big problems I've actually heard around not just AI therapists, but AI in general is like privacy.
Yeah.
Especially for like an AI therapist. There's some people who describe like the like data that YouTube collects for some of their AI or that Google collects for AI as essentially a ticking time bomb for someone to hack in and leak all of this data like a freaking dam burst.
Right.
And it's like, of course, there's going to be protections in place, but I do have to wonder, like, is HIPAA kind of like keeping up with this? Like, are they going to be making new? Is there anything in the air about like HIPAA potentially making new standards to allow for AI therapists, or what kind of I guess like medically ethical like stuff is kind of going on behind the scenes?
Yeah, for sure. I think when it comes to like prescribing, making like actual like medical decisions, like our AI doesn't do that at all. That's just like not our intention and not our goal. And so I think that that actually puts like to the one side in terms of like medical ethics of like you should take this pill. That's like not for a system like ours. The goal of our system is actually to help you like drive insight about your own life and to help you change your behavior. So I think so that would be the first thing I would say. Number two is I think it's a super important point. I think security is like the number one goal for our business pretty much is like making sure that that data doesn't get leaked, that our credentials are super robust, having things like penetration testing where we actually pay people to like try to break into our systems, like the best people in the world try to break in and like make sure that they can't. Right. So that's actually how you make sure that your systems are secure is you ask the smartest hackers in the world to try to break it and see if they can do it. There's actually two types of that. One is called black hat, the other is white hat. So the black hat means they don't get access to your code. They just try to do it from scratch, like a real hacker would do. And then the second one is they actually can read your code and they can actually suggest even more security. So we're doing all of those things. And I would hope that anyone in like the AI medical realm is doing the same. I think if they don't, then ultimately their customers will pay the price. And so it's important to pick a good provider. I think last point I would say on that, it's a really great set of questions. I think it's important to understand the incentives of the business that you're working with. So for example, like YouTube is owned by Google, and Google makes about 80% of their revenue through ads. And so when your business is ads, your incentive is actually to sell your customers' data to the advertisers. Like that is Google's business. And so in that regime, like your data is not really safe when you are using Google because Google's entire business model is to sell your data. Whereas like for a company that's more like specifically focused on medical care like us, like we're making money through like our customers directly paying us we're never going to sell ads. And so we never have an incentive to sell your data to anyone. Like your data never leaves our system. So I think that's when you're analyzing like who's worth trusting in like the tech space, I think it's important to understand how they make their money and whether you're the customer or whether you're actually like the product that's being sold. Okay, point 9 is focus on what actually matters in the field and like what the people who are actually building the AIs are like thinking about in terms of understanding where these systems are going to go and what they're going to be capable of over time. So there's something called the scaling laws. And basically, they are an observation that has been made about large language models that as you continue to scale up the size of the data sets and the amount of compute being used, they continue to get better. And a lot of people thought that these scaling laws would slow down at some point, and maybe they will, but so far they have never slowed down. And basically, the thing that's improving is like the quality of the answer. And so as those data sets scale up, the quality improves. One thing to note, though, is that this is logarithmic. And what that means is like if you do a 10x increase in compute, you're actually only getting linear progress. And so we're kind of reaching the point where like it's just becoming very expensive to continue scaling up. But every single time that someone scales up, we do see the performance improve. And that's so far has not slowed down at all. And we're kind of like at the level now where it's like a lot of people say it's like PhD level of like intelligence for most fields. And so then the question will be like, okay, can that reach like professor level intelligence at that field? And then can it reach like best in the world human level? And then can it actually surpass that? So those would be kind of like the next few steps of the scaling laws. But kind of the key inputs to this would basically be how much does it cost to produce a given output of AI? How much does it cost for a kilowatt hour of energy, which is like the main input is just electricity. The third one would be Moore's law, which is basically like how much compute can you get for a given unit of energy? And then I think the biggest engineering challenge right now in the field that if this never gets solved, it could actually be an important bottleneck to the scaling laws is basically how many GPUs or chips can you have working in parallel in a single data center. So basically, the people who are pushing the field are basically trying to improve all four of these at the same time. Because if any one of these stops improving, we basically will reach a slowdown in the scaling laws. But I think what that means, one of the ways that people test AIs is actually by the length of task that the AI can do. And so this right now is doubling every 7 months. This is actually a logarithmic scale. So this one is 1 second, and then it goes to 4 seconds, 15, 1 minute, 4 minutes, 15 minutes, 1 hour, 4 hours. Right? So like right now, we're kind of at the point where like the bleeding edge AI models, you can write a prompt and it'll do something that maybe would have taken you 30 minutes to do yourself. Whereas imagine in 3 years, you can write the same prompt and it'll do something that would have taken you a month to do yourself. So like that's kind of how like the researchers think about the performance of the model. And then I think these are some of the open questions in the field that nobody actually knows the answer to right now. But I think the answer to these will be what kind of predicts whether these scaling laws actually continue or whether we kind of reach some point where they actually just kind of stop getting smarter. And then that's kind of like the limit of what we can do with these AI systems. So one particular thing is will the AIs be able to create new science? So they haven't done that yet. I was talking about how they're kind of like at a PhD level. But most people who get a PhD don't actually like invent a new theory in the field that moves it forward. Usually that's reserved for like the people who go beyond the PhD level, right? And so the question is, if the AIs continue to improve, will they actually reach the point where they can invent new drugs or invent new ways to like harvest energy or like actually invent new science? And if they do that, I think that could potentially be incredibly transformative. You could imagine things like ending all curable diseases, for example. Like that sounds a little science fiction-y, but like it's actually possible if AIs become superhuman scientists. Another open question that's really important is, will we have transfer learning in robotics? So there's something called transfer learning that we've seen with large language models like ChatGPT, where when you get it to be better at one specific area, it actually also gets better at other areas. So for example, when they make it better at coding, it also gets better at like thinking through any type of problem, not just coding. Or when you get it to be better at like French, it also gets better at German. And so even like the top people who like invented these systems like don't really fully understand why the LLMs have transfer learning, but it's not something that we've seen yet in robotics. So with robotics, you basically have to have data for every single task that you want the robot to do. You have to have a lot of data for that specific task. And like if it gets better at like, putting a plate into the dishwasher, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's gotten any better at like folding your towels, right? So we don't yet have transfer learning in robotics, but there's a lot of people working on that. And if there is a big breakthrough there, I think that'll be hugely transformative. And I would say that's probably the second most important open question right now. A third one is like, will AIs learn to improve themselves? That's a big one. And that could get kind of like crazy scenarios where they're like, for example, like instead of just being a linear increase on this like logarithmic plot, you could actually imagine it like going like this, right? And so it's like exponential even on a logarithmic plot because the AIs are actually improving themselves. And then, yeah, basically all of these questions are really just another way of asking, like, will the scaling laws slow down? Which they have not yet slowed down, but no exponential lasts forever. because ultimately you reach like physical limitations at some point, and so the question will just be like, where does that start happening? Is it like next year or is it like 20 years from now? Yeah, so last point is really just kind of thinking more about your own careers and bringing it back to like this class where it's about becoming entrepreneurs. Think about where the future is headed, not just like what can AIs do now, but like where are they headed and how can I position myself? Whether you're an entrepreneur and you're trying to start a business or whether you're just trying to figure out which business you want to join as an employee, understanding where the technology is headed is crucial in order to make good decisions about that. And so I think there's going to be a lot of things that get unlocked in kind of like nonlinear or surprising ways. So for example, like what happens when the cost to produce a feature film drops from right now, you need thousands of people and it costs minimum $10 million to produce a feature film. And the most expensive ones are, $300 million. What happens when that cost becomes literally 0.1%? And so somebody can write their own feature film for like $500 in like a coffee shop for like a summer, right? Like the same way that you would write a book now, you can like write a movie by yourself. Like, what does that mean? Like, and like extrapolating those types of things and saying, like, okay, what does that then mean? And I think a couple examples. So, one would be when we got video conferencing, I don't think everyone was predicting this, but like, it then meant that now we need these things called co-working spaces all over the world. And so it's kind of like a nonlinear outcome there. Another example would be like, we got cheap GPS on our phones. And instead of just getting better Google Maps, which obviously we got that too, but we also got Uber and DoorDash. And like now you can order tacos at 2 a.m. and have them come to your door. Like that was all unlocked because of GPS on our phones. And so I think those are good. Those are just examples of like a new technology, like unlocking an opportunity. But I think as entrepreneurs, it's basically your number one job is to figure out which opportunities are going to be unlocked by the things that AI can do, not just AI, but any technology, the new things that technology is enabling. What is that then going to mean a couple years down the line? So a classic example in business would be like Netflix versus Blockbuster. Like if somebody just looked at Blockbuster and was like, I can make this 10% more efficient. Like, yeah, they probably could have had a decent business, but then Netflix comes along and says, like, what if we make this 100x more efficient, not just like 10%, right? And so trying to think at that level, understanding where the tech is going, positioning yourself for that. Yeah. And I think the last point is like if you're either working for or trying to start a business that doesn't assume that the AIs are going to keep getting better, it's probably not a long-term success. Maybe you can have, I mean, there's a lot of decent businesses you can make that are great for a couple of years, but like to be a long-term success, you're going to have to position yourself just like Kai Lenny here on this. I think that's Jaws, but I'm not sure. Maybe some of you guys know. Kai Lenny here placing himself right at the right spot to catch the wave, right? Like if he was a couple feet back when that broke, he would have missed it. I think that's like a great metaphor for entrepreneurship. You got to be right at the right spot at the right time, and then paddle really hard. Actually, in that case, he probably had a jet ski pulling him. But anyways, and then here's my shameless plug for my company. We make the world's best AI therapist, Mentla.com. It's actually free right now. It's not going to be free forever, but right now we're trying to optimize for growth. We're trying to get as many users as we can, and so yeah, you guys can use it. It's free. Check it out, Mentla.com. Yeah, thank you guys. Yeah, what's up?
So your company is like really used, like if it's really used as a AI therapist, how do you
Yeah, good question. So I think long term or even like medium term, like in the next few years, like there's a lot of ways for us to make money. So one example would be like making it free for most users, kind of like ChatGPT. But then if you want to use it, maybe like if you want to use it every other day, like it's free. But if you want to use it every day, like you got to pay, $20 a month or something like that. I think we also have like opportunities around like working with like healthcare providers or like insurance providers and saying like, cover this as opposed to just covering human therapy because it's going to be a lot cheaper. And so that's a big revenue stream for us. But right now, like we're really just getting started. And so our goal is just to get as many users as we can, get as much feedback, and try to improve the AI until we feel like, yeah, basically our goal is growth right now. It's kind of like there's a trade-off between like market share and revenue. And so right now we're optimizing for market share. And then later on, once we're like hopefully like a household name or like the most prominent AI therapy company, then there's so many ways to make money after that. We could do ads. I think ads, actually getting back to his point about like once you do ads, you basically change the business model where like now your goal is to keep people's attention as long as possible to serve them more ads. And your goal is to like basically sell people's data to have more efficient ad targeting. And so like it actually changes the whole incentives of the product. I think for something like us, our goal is to actually help you fix your problem, whatever that is, and actually stop using the product. And so what we've seen is that like people who we help will come back later. I mean, something reoccurs or they need it again in their life, maybe a few months later. So it's still in our interest to help you. But unlike a Facebook or a YouTube, like our goal is not to keep you like using it as much as possible. Our goal is to actually help you. So I think the ads can actually create a strange incentive for the business, which is why like platforms like YouTube and TikTok are like so addictive, is because they're selling you ads. Well, they're not selling you ads, they're selling ads to the advertisers, but your attention is what they're monetizing. And so their whole incentive is to keep you glued to your screen. So we don't really want to go down that route, but yeah. I think it's better when you have like a direct economic relationship with your customer and they just like pay you for a service. It creates better like incentive alignment between the business. But yeah.
Is it expensive to have AI, like specifically for your company being used constantly? Or does it
Yeah.
not cost money?
No, it is. Yeah, there's definitely a cost, but I think there actually getting back to like this point about like predicting where the trends are going rather than just like where is it going, not just where is it at. I think over the past 12 months, we've seen like a 10x price drop in AI prices. And then over the past like 24 months, it's been like 50x price drop for like the same level of intelligence. And so we assume that that's going to continue. And so that's like when we're thinking about like projecting our business financials, like if your biggest like cost is dropping that fast, it's good. Yeah. It's a good place to spend your money when you know it's going to drop that quickly. Yeah, what's up? No, it's great.
This, where the therapists are AI and whatnot, if, say you had someone that's like suicidal, having suicidal ideations
Yeah.
and whatnot, do you have like safety precautions in there that like immediately send someone to the house or like?
Yeah. Well, we don't immediately send someone, but we definitely escalate to like 811, which is like suicide hotline. We actually think we have the world's best like escalation system for that, because what a lot of these like last generation systems that aren't using like LLMs like ChatGPT, they're just kind of using simpler tech. What they'll do is like they're using keywords and they're just saying like they said the word suicide. And so we're just going to stop the conversation and say like, call this number. You can't use the app anymore. And actually for a lot of people who are in a crisis state, that's actually like very hurtful and like makes them feel really bad and actually could make their issue worse in that moment. Long term, I think that our goal is to help you in that situation get to like a human for help. But like in that moment, the most important thing is to actually like stay with them and like hear what they're going through, because otherwise you're actually just like making, like, let's say for example they're feeling abandoned, like they don't have anyone, and then like their AI just like turns off and they're like, what? And so our system is able to use, I would actually say like state of the art and like more sophisticated because the tech enables that. So we actually do, one of the main things we're working on right now is like a lot of simulations. So we have like these like fake clients that basically come in and they're actually just AIs themselves with like a whole bio and like a backstory. And then they interact with our system. And so we can create specific scenarios like you are contemplating suicide and you come into the system and we can actually test how the system responds to that in a way that's like fully automated. And so that's actually the main thing we're working on this month is like better simulations of like edge cases like that. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, I'll email. I think you already have them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, you will get them.
Put them on Manoa. That's our course management stuff, our website.
Cool. Yeah.
What would you start this online being a therapist?
Yeah, so I had already worked at Calm and I studied cognitive science in school. I'd always been kind of interested in like mental health and psychology, not just tech. And so working at Calm and seeing like the impact that a small team like that could have on a lot of people was like really inspiring. But then after I left Calm, I still felt like it's just like so much work to do around like the intersection of like tech and mental health. And then when like generative AI came out, I already knew a lot about machine learning. We actually used a lot of machine learning at Calm, but not like generative AI because that wasn't really around yet. But when generative AI came out, it was like, for me, it was like, okay, this is the next thing I'm going to focus my career on. Like I just knew right away that I wanted to spend at least the next few years of my career focused on that because it was so interesting. And so I actually started talking to a guy that I worked with at Calm. We were coworkers there. And we started this company together. We just felt like the tech was finally going to be able to enable something like this, where like you could actually have a full-on like therapy experience with an AI, which like even a year ago, like the latest, like we're using specific parts of our system like require like a lot of intelligence because we're putting in a lot of information and it has to make like difficult decisions. So even a year ago, like the AI tech wasn't really there. We started the business about 2 years ago, but like kind of to the point I was talking to her about of like the price curve is dropping. At the same time, the intelligence is getting bigger. And so the right time, I think, to start a business is when the tech is almost ready for it, but not quite. And then you can kind of like ride that wave like up almost. And so that's why I think we're like right now, like we have one of the best, if not the best, like AI therapist, is because we kind of started it a little bit before the tech was quite ready, if that makes sense. Anyways, yeah. Yeah.
You said that you majored in cognitive science. Would you mind describing what that is for the students?
Sure. Yeah. So cognitive science it's kind of multidisciplinary, but it's basically the study of the mind. And so it kind of combines, actually, computer science is one of the components of cognitive science because studying like artificial minds is like a great way to understand our minds. But it also includes like psychology. So basically you have to take, for at least at Berkeley, to get a degree in cog sci, you need like multiple different fields that you have to like round out. So you have to take classes in psychology to understand like that level. You have to take classes in like perception, like how does our brain actually process information? You have to take like math courses. So it's basically like combining a lot of different disciplines, all with the goal of like understanding how the mind works. There's actually a related major at Stanford called symbolic systems, which is basically the same exact thing as cognitive science. And a lot of the people who are like now at the top of like the AI field, like studied symbolic systems at Stanford in particular. Like of like the top 25 people in AI, like half of them studied symbolic systems at Stanford. Because it's kind of like in order to understand how to like build AI, you kind of like need to understand our mind. Ultimately, like we're trying to reproduce our own minds in a computer. And so, anyways.
Is that why you measure the performance in flops rather than like?
Flops, it actually stands for floating point operation per second. Oh, where was that slide? So
Yeah.
that's actually just like doing like a math calculation.
Operations.
So are you referring to this
Yeah,
one?
so like in a standard processor, they're measured by how many gigahertz do they have, right? Whereas like human cognition is measured in terms of flops, right?
Flops would be more of like a computer measure.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. But actually now like the largest neural nets or AI models now have like 100 billion parameters, which the estimates for how many like synapses in our brains, like the human brain, is around 1 trillion. And so we're actually kind of like getting close to like the number of neurons in our brains matching the number of neurons in like an LLM. And a lot of people think that that's like a good indication that like basically one more 10x of the scaling laws and we'll be able to like have like a full level of human intelligence. But nobody knows for sure, obviously.
Any questions? I'll ask one.
Yeah.
When did you know when it was time to leave your first venture?
To leave Calm?
Yeah.
I mean, there was a few reasons I left. I'd been there 7 years.
Yeah.
I was there a long time. I don't know. I felt like the company was kind of changing and it was kind of like, it just felt a little bit more like it was like in the maintenance phase.
Mhm.
Like we'd built something, we'd scaled it, and now we were hiring people who were like managers, I guess.
I think that's
And that just felt less exciting to me. Like, so,
I think that's probably why there's like serial entrepreneurs, because in strategic management, there's a difference between the exploration phase, that's when we're innovating and creating something new. The exploitation phase, that's when you're hiring people to manage.
Exactly.
things, right?
exactly. And sometimes it takes a long time to play out. Like, for example, you look at like Apple and like Steve Jobs was like the innovator. And now like Tim Cook, he's been there for like 13 years. But I think a lot of people now are saying like, when was the last time Apple came out with anything that anyone wanted? It's like the next iPhone is like 5% better. Like he's just a manager. Like he's not really innovating, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's actually what happens to most companies is like the founder innovates. I mean, most companies die, honestly. But like if they succeed, the founder has innovated and then is able to scale that, and then someone else takes over and like they can usually manage that for a while, but like the rate of growth is always going to slow down. And
Technocrat. Yeah, there's the same thing is happening at like Starbucks, at Target. Like Target was having for a long time, they had a very good relationship with their customers, right? And just recently, the CEO resigned and they hired on a finance guy.
right. That's
And
how,
he's gonna do,
yeah.
Okay, how do I increase transaction cost efficiency, right? How do I
Right.
reduce our costs and increase the willingness to pay for our customers? But that gradually kind of drives people away from the business.
Totally.
Yeah.
I would actually say that totally unrelated to this talk, but yeah, I would say like if you're picking a company to work for, like work for one where the founder, the person or set of people who started the company are still there running it. Even, I mean, that could mean it still could be a huge company, but like if the founder is still in charge, usually it's going to have like more of like a spirit of like, let's try things rather than like, let's make sure that we don't mess anything up, you know? And that's a huge difference when you're working at a company.
Howard Schultz, the CEO of the founder of Starbucks, anyway. That's the reason why he came back for 3 different stints as CEO, because he was put in a technocratic manager
Yeah.
who was, again, when Starbucks first came out, it was the only company or the only place you could go that had free Wi-Fi. You could just sit there and have the Wi-Fi. And so I think like a finance type person, they look at Wi-Fi as a cost of doing business.
Right.
Whereas
Right.
the person who's more in tune with customer experience are going to say, you know what, our customers are spending more time
Of course.
in individual visits, and they're coming more frequently because they have the free Wi-Fi, because it's a place to hang out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, it's like why casinos give you free drinks, right?
Exactly.
Wait, casinos give free
Sometimes. I like the high, like if you're at like the most expensive tables, yeah. If you're just playing like the 25-cent slots, like no.
It depends on where you are. So I had my cousin's girlfriend used to work as a bartender at a casino, and she was like, if you play here, they'll give you free drinks the whole time, right? So yeah, they do it. They want you to lose money. Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.